Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kendra and this video is going to be all about my Skyline Tee by Tori U. So this is a project that is fresh off the needles. Just last night I bound off the second sleeve and wet blocked it, and this morning I weaved in all of the ends. And now this evening, I'm coming to you to share all of the nitty-gritty details. This is a fingering weight pattern. It is a saddle shoulder. This is the first saddle shoulder that I have ever knit. It is knit top down. The top of the saddle shoulder has a 3x1 rib texture, and all of the trim details are 1x1 rib and finished in tubular bind off. In terms of the pattern itself, I found it incredibly easy to follow. There were no elements of the instructions that were unclear to me. I didn't feel confused or frustrated at any point while knitting this pattern, and I think that is a testament to a well-written pattern, especially because I've never knit a saddle shoulder before, and I felt very well supported through knitting the entire piece. And that is without being too wordy or hand-holdy or over-explaining any elements. I felt like there was just the right amount of information in the pattern. No complaints about the pattern itself. So in terms of the knitting experience, very fast. It took me 2.5 weeks to knit this. And this is an adult size fingering weight garment, so that is a very quick turnaround, even for me. And that came down to a few different factors. So in the first week, I had cast on exactly 1 week before I went on a family vacation to Jamaica. So I was gonna have a lot of traveling time, a lot of leisure time, just a lot of knitting time in general the following week. So I pushed to get the top section of this pattern complete in that first week, which meant knitting the shoulder saddles, the back panel, the front panel, and getting to the point where I joined the body in the round. And I'm happy to say that by the time we left for Jamaica, I had joined the body in the round, and it was smooth stockinette in the round for that whole flight and most of that trip. So I'm really glad I pushed to do that because it made for some really easy mindless knitting for my vacation. Although I will say at points I did find myself wanting something a little more interesting, a little more engaging. But during the flight specifically, I appreciated not having to knit back and forth or swap out cords on my needle set or all of the fiddly things that came with the first portion of this project, and to be able to just knit in the round, no fuss. I was really grateful that I made the push to join the body. But when I was sitting poolside or beachside and there was nothing really else going on, and I had the mental capacity and the physical space to do something a little more intricate that might require me to follow a chart or knit something flat or pick up some stitches or switch around needles, I didn't have anything to scratch that itch. So I'm glad I did it, but I also kind of wish I had something a little more interesting to knit during my vacation. And that's mainly because the vacation was a true vacation. I was not doing any exploring or excursions or touristy things. We were just hanging out. Nevertheless, it was still a really good project to have with me while I was in Jamaica. So yeah, the entirety of week 2, I was in Jamaica knitting stockinette in the round, and during that trip, which I believe was 8, maybe 9 days in total, I finished the body and I also completed the collar. So during the week 3 or week 2.5, all I had to do was knit the sleeves and then I was done. And I think the first sleeve I knit in a day on a Sunday. And the second sleeve I knit over the course of a couple of days during the work week. And yeah, it was super, super easy. But the project was so fast entirely because of the downtime that I had during working on this. I think in a normal situation where I was not taking a vacation, it would take me 3.5 to 5.5 weeks at least. So in terms of the specifics for my version of this project, I knit the 4th size. I got gauged with the recommended needle size, which was, I don't know, I'm pretty sure it was 3.5 millimeters. And in terms of modifications, I didn't do anything major. I knit to the pattern lengths that it instructed. I did pick up more stitches than the pattern instructed. I just picked up a ratio of 2 out of 3, and I kind of proceeded with the number of stitches that gave me, and it happened to be a few stitches more than what the pattern said I should have with my sleeves. But I'm always going to welcome a few more stitches in the sleeve area because I do have large arms. The other modification, again, very minor, I did not switch needle sizes for the ribbing on the arm. And I just felt like I didn't want it to hug closely to my arm, but I don't think it would have made much of a difference one way or the other. But I guess I was feeling lazy, so I just decided not to, and I went with that. Overall, I am very happy with how this project turned out. It was such a quick and fun knit. I am really glad I have gotten the saddle shoulder construction as a new skill. And yeah, the fit is great. I like the color, really no complaints. Now, speaking of the color, the yarn, I used Ancient Fiber Crafts in the Socknado base, which is an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and the color Davy Jones Locker, which is a really nice medium bluish green color. I purchased these skeins from a D-stash. I actually talked about this yarn in my Stash and Tell sock yarn edition that I did a few weeks ago. So I shared more details there, but I purchased 3 skeins in this D-stash. They were all the same dye lot, and I didn't want to make 3+ pairs of socks in the same yarn, even if I gave 2 of the 3 away as gifts. I just wasn't interested in knitting multiple socks with the exact same yarn. So I kind of figured it was the perfect opportunity to use the 3 skeins for a garment instead. And this is the first time I knit a garment in hand-dyed yarn, and from the onset I was adamant about not alternating skeins, and I kept my word on that, and I didn't alternate skeins. And we have some striping here in the body, and it's kind of begins when I join the body in the round, and I think it's more disguised when I was knitting back and forth at the top. But the striping I do have, it doesn't bother me enough to go back and fix it, and to have this striping is a very reasonable price for me to pay to not have to alternate skeins. So I have absolutely no regrets with that decision. That said, I in general would prefer a more solid look. Even if alternating skeins, you're still gonna have that variation in color because it's hand dyed. And for that reason, I don't know if I would knit another hand dyed garment. I won't say never, but I'm definitely more inclined to lean toward commercially dyed yarns for garment knitting in particular. But for a first hand dyed garment, for a first garment in hand dyed yarn, I think this is a pretty reasonable success. I think this is a success. So I'm overall happy with it, even with the color inconsistencies. What I will say is that the color value, at least from skein to skein, is very consistent. So I don't think you can look at this piece and see where I switched skeins, which is my biggest concern. I didn't want any obvious lines when switching from one skein to another, but I knew from the beginning that I would more or less be okay if there was some subtle color pooling or striping that I could totally live with. But the unintentional color blocking is when I would probably reconsider my decision. And luckily I didn't have to deal with that. And yeah, overall, happy with the color distribution. The other thing about this yarn is that yes, it is wool, but it is a superwash wool and it has that nylon. So to me, wearing it even now on an 80-degree day in an air-conditioned environment, I'm perfectly comfortable wearing it. It is not too hot or stifling, and I think I could wear this very comfortably in an office setting or in most settings, casual settings during the summer. So that was one of my sort of minor concerns going into this project, is if the superwash merino would be comfortable to wear in the warmer temperatures. And the jury is still out on that ultimately, because again, I just finished it this morning, so it's not like I have a whole summer worth of wearing this piece under my belt so I could truly speak to how comfortable it is in the warmer months. But I will say, sitting here on an 80-degree day in an air-conditioned room, I am perfectly comfortable. There is no prickle, no itch, no sweating. I feel completely comfortable, and I'm wearing this next to skin, so I don't even have like another t-shirt or anything under this. So I think that bodes well for how comfortable this will be wearing it out in the real world. But if I find that to be different than my expectations, I will update in some way. Maybe I'll pin a comment below. But I think this is going to be a really comfortable, easy piece to wear. I even like it more than the cotton summer pieces that I have knit in the past. So this may convert me to be a sock yarn person when it comes to summer garment knitting over cotton or other cotton blends. So I'm still kind of figuring out what my perfect ideal summer yarn is, but so far, this has been the best fabric I have gotten in a summer garment before. So I think that's really promising. When I first finished this piece before blocking, it looked quite a bit different than it does now, particularly related to the length and the body. So I relied on blocking a little bit more than I have in other projects, just so that I can get some length into the body. So I stretched it quite a bit during the blocking process, and I'm happy to say that the length is a lot better on me now than it was before blocking. And in general, I don't like to rely on blocking to fix my problems. But the other thing about superwash yarn is that it does have a tendency to sort of stretch out when you wet block it. So I was leaning into that quality of superwash yarn when it came to blocking this piece, and it definitely worked in my advantage. So I did weigh the leftover yarn. I have 16 grams of this yarn left over, and that means I used about 284 grams of yarn to make this. And in terms of yardage, that is about 1,093 yards went into this. And again, I knit the 4th size, and the yardage estimate that the designer provided for the 4th size, 1,079, which means I only used 14 yards more than the estimated yardage, which is pretty accurate. No surprises in terms of yardage, and I'm really glad I had enough to complete this project. That is all I have to share about my outline tee by Tori Yu. Overall, I am very happy with it. I would recommend the pattern. I would recommend knitting a summer garment in sock yarn, and I'm thrilled with how this turned out. This will likely be my only summer knit of 2024, but I think for it to be the only one, I think it's a pretty good one. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.